Chuck E. Chan.
Here comes Chuck E. Chan.
Martial arts expert of reptile land.
A few months ago, I rewatched Breaking Bad for the very first time since it originally aired. So I figured it's about time I watched Better Call Saul, and I'm going to review it right here, right now. So, Better Call Saul, a lot of people talk about it in the context of it being compared to Breaking Bad, which is reasonable. This is a spin-off of Breaking Bad, and this is a prequel to Breaking Bad. It's set a couple of years before Breaking Bad, and I think that's really where the show kind of fails in concept, because a lot of these characters are as they exist in Breaking Bad, because it's set only 2 or 3 years before Breaking Bad. So it's really weird. And like I said, it fails in concept because of that. Now, Breaking Bad, up until the point that Gus is defeated, is a really phenomenal show. If that was the entirety of Breaking Bad, it would probably be in my top 10 shows of all time. But since they dragged the show on beyond that, and once the big bad is defeated, the new big bad is Todd and Lydia, who are super lame and uninteresting characters. The show just drops off amazingly after that, and just it would never be in consideration for my top even 20 shows ever. It just is way too big of a decline, becomes way too boring and just stretched. Just the idea is stretched, and especially the fact that in Breaking Bad, the plotline with Gus's undoing is his inability to separate himself, to look at things from a broad perspective, which is ultimately the problem that Walt had when he was first dealing with Gus, is that he's not really seeing the big picture. But Gus isn't seeing the big picture because he won't let go of this vendetta that he has against Hector Salamanca, the guy in the wheelchair. So you have him, show Don Hilario's necklace to Hector, just rubbing it into this guy who he's basically torturing, and that's ultimately Gus's undoing. That's how Walt gets the best of him. So then everything after that, when Walt just refuses to see the big picture and just kind of destroys his family and everything after that, it just feels so stupid. Like he just didn't learn his lesson from how he defeated Gus. It just doesn't really make any sense, and they kind of just butcher the character of Walt prior to that, because if things had ended on the episode where Gus is defeated, then Walt just lives with his family and moves on from everything, and everyone gets a decent ending. So clearly that's where the show should have ended, and it would be much better if it had. Now, Better Call Saul, being a prequel that's set only a few years prior, is not interesting. It's unfortunate because the show on a technical level is really well done, and some things are very interesting. The character Saul, and all the characters to the left of him in this image, of Howard, who's a lawyer who employs the woman next to him, is Kim, who's the love interest of Saul. They're really interesting. Their dynamic of Howard being their boss, and then them no longer working for him, and then him wanting both of them back, and Kim goes and works for these guys, Saul goes and works for these guys, and their lawyering stuff, their dynamic is very interesting. Everyone to the right of Saul, horribly uninteresting. One of the problems of watching this show is it doesn't make any sense to watch it if you haven't seen Breaking Bad, because characters show up in Better Call Saul, and it is shot and edited where clearly these characters are supposed to have a gravitas to their appearance. It's supposed to be, you're supposed to be like, oh, it's Gus from Breaking Bad, heck yeah. That would be completely lost on you. You would just be kind of confused if you haven't seen Breaking Bad. You'd be like, alright, why does this guy matter? Why does this person matter? Why are all these people showing up? Some of them matter, and some of them don't, but the edit makes it seem like it's supposed to be like a big thing. Like, oh, there's Hector Salamanca. And it just, when you do that, it just makes it so your show doesn't really stand on its own two legs. And the fact that you have plot lines that are expanded upon from Breaking Bad also creates the same issue. Now, I'm going to have to kind of rank the show's characters from the main character downwards. So there's way more characters than what you see in this image. But the main character is Saul, and then right beneath him is Mike, and then beneath him is Kim, the woman here, the love interest, then Nacho, who's the guy between Mike and Gus, then this guy on the left, Howard, and then the guy on the far right, the Salamanca guy. Now, the problem with these Salamanca guys, right? Nacho works for Hector Salamanca. Lalo Salamanca shows up to sort of take Hector's place as Hector gets crippled into a wheelchair. The problem is you don't care about the cartel. There's no reason to expand upon them further from Breaking Bad. You already get enough context of Mike and Gus from the show Breaking Bad. You don't care for any of that to be expanded upon. You don't really care about Hector Salamanca as in Breaking Bad, in the flashback where you have Gus and he's giving the business pitch to the Don of the cartel, and Hector's there, and Hector takes out Gus's business partner / best friend. You understand the feud between Hector and Gus in that moment, right? And you understand why Gus won't let this feud go. So they did a good job of establishing how Gus exists within the cartel in Breaking Bad. You don't care to see more of it. You don't need more of that developed. You don't need to see Hector Salamanca before he was in the wheelchair. It's just not interesting. That's why this show heavily fails in concept. Now, do you need Gus? Yes, I would say sprinkle him in for sure. But I would say what would be interesting wouldn't be this whole 2-3 seasons of him working towards building the lab underneath the laundry. No one cares about that. That isn't interesting at all. What you want to see is him building up Los Polos Hermanos. And what you want to see is Mike establishing... They do one plot with Mike, where there's him and his deceased son's ex-wife, I suppose, widowed wife, and the granddaughter, right? And you kind of get why Mike is the way that he is. But the problem is that the whole rest of the show, pretty much every episode, has a whole bunch of Mike. Like, the point of, like, Mike and Gus in Breaking Bad is that they're mysterious. That they're kind of like, they're these badass guys who are quite mysterious. So you kind of destroy that mystique retroactively, developing them further. You kind of make them seem a little lame and a little stupider. And just having so much Mike when ultimately he's a bodyguard. That's what it comes down to. He's kind of just this guy who's just Billy Badass. And it's not interesting enough for that to sustain entertainment across like 6 seasons of this show where you have hour-long episodes. I'm sorry, but having a major Mike subplot in each and every episode, it just gets kind of dull. Now, that being said, I would give this show, in so many other ways, it's technically well done. And the show overall is entertaining, but the weight is absolutely heavily carried by Saul, Kim, and Howard. And Nacho is an interesting character because he's like, one of the new characters. And Lalo is at least kind of interesting, like kind of works. But you just never needed any more actual development of Mike or Gus. And honestly, you almost don't even need them in this show at all. But I would rate the show overall an A-. It is certainly better than Breaking Bad. If Breaking Bad had stopped where it should have, with Gus getting defeated, then Breaking Bad would far surpass it, as it's way more interesting of a concept. The problem is that they spit on that concept in the final season, because the concept of a teacher who's terminally ill, who decides to cook meth to support his family, as they'll need support. The guy's only 50. It's not like he has this big retirement. He doesn't have this big savings. His family's screwed without him. So you have this awesome fish out of water, really interesting concept for a show. And then in the last season, it's just kind of like, oh, well, he doesn't really actually care about his family. And, oh, he's just actually going to be a total dickhead and destroy everything. It's just like, this isn't good. What were you thinking? Todd isn't good. Like, Todd and Lydia pale in comparison to Gus. This is so unnecessary. Like, shouldn't shouldn't have happened. So I would say if Breaking Bad had stopped where it should have, it would be like a solid A, tickling on the verge of A+. It would probably be in my top 10 series of all time. Neither Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul could honestly even break top 20. There's no shot. Yes, Better Call Saul is entertaining. It's worth a watch. You need to have watched Breaking Bad first. It's totally okay. It's good.
Pocket